Hello there, and welcome back to the neighborhood. Today, we're taking a look at some pieces from SW1X Audio Design, an English company that focuses on top quality vacuum tube electronics and single driver loudspeakers. Specifically, we're taking a look at the DAC3 and VDT2, which are a TDA 1541 based vacuum tube, non oversampling, digital filterless R2R DAC, and a vacuum tube based audio transport streamer that goes along with it. The DAC offers AES, EBU, or coaxial split-off inputs that support up to 24-bit 96 kHz PCM audio data, and uniquely for a DAC without a volume control, has two simultaneous analog outputs. The tubes inside the DAC consist of a directly heated 5x3 for its choke filter power supply, a 6N6P, and an E180F for an asynchronous valve clock, with an EAA91 for the R2R TDA 1541 DAC chips separate valve rectified power supply. Inside the VDT2, valve rectified choke filtered power supplies were chosen. Note all the associated vacuum tubes. This transport uses a vacuum tube master clock and vacuum tube spit-off output stage, which is pretty unique. According to website specifications, ECC88, EC86, 6X4, and EAA91 tubes are employed in various positions within the circuit to result in the best possible sound outcome, at least at this particular performance level. SW1X has a number of different performance levels for each of their devices, ranging from 1 to 5 in most cases. And to be clear, for those that are watching, the DAC is a level 3, while the transport is a level 2. Despite each unit being housed in SW1X's compact chassis, each box is still rather large in my opinion, measuring 145 millimeters high, 345 millimeters wide, and 410 millimeters deep. While I wish each box was a bit smaller, at least in width and depth dimensions, I actually wish that it was a bit larger in height to be able to accommodate Coke bottle 5x3 tubes.
Which it can't at this time, at least not without the top off. Still, taking a look inside reveals that each chassis is stuffed to the brim with high quality parts.
That are spaced out appropriately to limit any kind of electronic interference.
In fact, it's my understanding that the designer at SW1X,
Dr. Slawwell Rashkow meticulously implements his circuits and chooses the materials for his builds, always with the sonic outcome in mind, first and foremost. But before we move on into the sound, it's actually not all accolades and praises for these builds, as I do have to address a personal gripe of mine that I have with one aspect of the design of these devices. And that is that there is no standard USB input for a computer on the VDT. To me, this is an issue, because the two units are so well matched and so harmonically rich that when used with one another, it produces sonic bliss. I just want to be able to use them together at all times, but I can't do this due to a lack of USB connectivity. While one certainly can use a third party USB to coaxial conversion device to be able to use the DAC3 with a computer, it's also cutting out the VDT in the process. Yet, you may have noticed that from the pictures, there does appear to be some USB inputs on the back of the VDT2. While there are technically USB inputs on the back of the device, these are designed only for external USB sticks, flash drives, or hard drives, not driver-based USB output for my computer. If it were up to me, I'd add versatility to SW1X's VDT devices by having them also accept USB connectivity from a computer. With that said, I also note that SW1X as a company at this current time somewhat disagrees with this philosophy of mine, instead claiming that computer USB connectivity was intentionally left out of the VDT, as to include it would only result in a computer circuitry negatively impacting performance of a closed system, in their opinion, that is otherwise well implemented and put together. You see, I asked Dr. Rashkow about this, and he was quick to point out that there are other versions of the DAC1, DAC2, and DAC3 that are specifically designed to support USB input, even without a USB to spit-off adapter. However, this doesn't really take into account my personal wishes, which is to be able to include the tones of the VDT in the course of my everyday computer use, as I shift back and forth from other tasks to critical listening. Instead, in regards to the way their lineup is currently constructed, it eliminates use of their VDT devices when using USB with a computer. Their other DACs that incorporate USB from a computer also have to be housed in an even larger chassis to account for the additional electronics that are needed. It's unfortunate that as things currently stand, I can't make use of the VDT's vacuum tube based output stage and vacuum tube based master clock when I'm at my computer, which again, this is a fairly unique feature of the SW1X VDT2 that I'd like to take advantage of compared to other run of the mill audio transports. My understanding is that SW1X, once upon a time, made a standalone VSB device, which was a USB input and split of output, that could be a nice option if offered again. or perhaps USB input could be implemented on future VDT devices. In the meantime, those that purchase a VDT will have to make do with the fact that it supports Roon, UPnP, Tidal and Spotify Connect, Ethernet, and practically every other option in terms of connectivity other than USB to computer connectivity. While I think that my gripe about USB connectivity with a computer is certainly a valid one to me and other users like me, I'm willing to let it slide somewhat for now, as it's hard for me to express just how impressed I am with the sound of each component. Even so, we'll try to give it a shot, and we'll start with the VDT2. Normally, I don't put much stock into audio transports, as I rarely find them to improve sound drastically, or even for the better, that is. But the SW1X VDT2 is certainly the exception. This thing literally made everything sing, and it improved each DAC's performance, at least somewhat, that I hooked it up with. I experimented with a number of different coaxial DACs, including the Konus Audio Digitali 2000, Orchid Audio's PCAMP-I Plus, iFiMan's EF500 and EF499, and the SW1X DAC3 SPX, of course. And in each case, I got the best performance I had ever experienced from the coaxial sections of each of these DACs. Not only was detail and precision enhanced, but also naturalism as well. Transients gained realism, and any form of digital character, like hardness, brittleness, or over accentuation, melted away. With the VDT2, in each instance, the sound became course corrected, and each DAC achieved the height of its listenability. This outcome really surprised me, and if I was going to recommend a coaxial transport to anyone, irregardless of budget, this would certainly be at the top of my list. Because this unit is intended for demonstrations at shows, I'm going to have to send this one off after a bit of time with it. But it pairs so nicely with my Konus Audio Digitali 2000 in my main system that I'd really like to have one for myself one day. But now, let's shift gears to the DAC3. The sound of the DAC3 can loosely be described as lovely. I say loosely because while it always sounded really good, it's a bit hard for me to tell you exactly what the DAC sounds like. You see, this is a tube-based DAC, and it came with a number of 5Y3 tubes to try out with it as I did my evaluation. And this is just the power section of this DAC. Changing out the other tubes surely will also change out the sound. But with each tube that I tried in this section of the DAC, the change wasn't minimal. One of the tubes I was provided with, the Phillips tube, was my favorite and the most revealing. But the Joint Army-Navy Sylvania tube was also nice, euphonic, and offered a more holographic soundstage. Another tube, an RCA, was a fair bit brighter and leaner, but also faster, with a more delicate but still detailed sound. Here, the top-end extension was quite excellent with the RCA. This really came across at the headphone desk, as I actually preferred this tube with the VDT2 in this listening location at least, as it staged better with the Traffomatic Head 2 SE in that particular pairing. In other words, one can kind of tailor the sound of this DAC to their setup depending on the tubes which they choose to install and what other components they choose to use with it. Moreover, the coaxial SPDIF cable that one uses as an interconnect between the two devices also makes a decently substantial difference in the sound. I used a few for my personal collection, in addition to the Chernoff Ultimate cable and Hijiri HDG Million cable that was sent with this package, and each offered a different perspective. The Hijiri HDG Million cable, for example, had a wonderful tone and detail, but was more of a step back sound.
Like one was at the perfect distance from the stage to observe the nuance of the music without being blown away by the force of the music itself.
The Chernov, on the other hand, was somewhat more intense in comparison, mildly mid-forward, and really shined with vocals. Because of such nuanced responsiveness to both tubes and interconnects, these SW1X pieces are tremendously versatile in that they possess the characteristic of sonic adaptability, which makes them an extremely safe buy for practically any audiophile. As you know, we audiophiles are always tinkering and chasing the proverbial dragon, either trying to upgrade our systems due to an actual need or just out of boredom sometimes. With this DAC, you can experiment, play, and precisely adjust or dial in your preferred sound, even if that changes over time. Overall, in terms of the sound of this DAC, some overarching themes include trending towards a more natural sound, a nice rhythmic flow, and the absence of stridency or harshness. The soundstage of the DAC3 is larger than the average holistically, and mostly paints itself with a wider brush, even if it shrinks a bit here or there with certain tube choices in the power stage. Nevertheless, the DAC3 always displays excellent auditory depth and instrument separation within its stage. There's certainly a richness to the notes that always comes across to the ear, even when a tube, with a thinner, more precise presentation is installed. But as I wrap things up, I'll really be saddened to return the SW1X DAC3 and VDT2 digital transport and streamer, as I truly enjoyed my time with both of these components. I was pleasantly surprised by the performance of each, and could live contently with either of them as my primary DAC and/or streamer in my main systems until the end of time. The flexibility of each piece means one can always make adjustments. That is, if their tastes change, or perhaps they get bored with their current sound, or moreover, they get the audiophile itch to tinker. Whatever the case may be, depending upon the cabling and the tubes installed, these SW1X pieces are capable of top-tier performance, and they get my highest recommendation as in-game audiophile sources and components. To get the best out of your listening experience, you have to start with a solid foundation, and these SW1X pieces do just that and more. The sound here is so adaptable that I can almost recommend this as a blind buy to anyone, because if one ends up being unhappy with the initial sound they hear, they can always experiment with tubes, cabling, and other aspects of their setup until they are satisfied. Thanks again to Gestalt Fine Audio for sending these SW1X pieces into the channel for review, and thank you for watching. I'll leave links in the description below for you to keep up with this channel and check out Gestalt as well. It's my understanding that they will have some SW1X pieces featured at Expona this weekend, so make sure to stop by room 592 to have a listen and tell them that I sent you. And with that, I'm out for now.